Good morning. I had to move back over with the camera. I was told I need to stay around the corner of this table this morning for the camera. So welcome and thank you for coming today to the second Superintendent Advisory Council of the year. For those of y'all watching on video, welcome and thank you for joining us. Hopefully this is informative. I use this time to try to get a message out to the different constituents in our district, but also to hear from you as well. And so thank you for taking the time to be here today. Luckily, it's a sunshiny day, supposed to be in the 50s today, which I'll take those in January. I'm sure you understand that. Just as we begin today, if anybody has any good news to share from your areas that we might not know as a district or other people sitting around the tables might not know, I want to give you a chance to talk about good things that's going on either in your departments or schools or with kids. Just take a few minutes if we would, if anybody has any good news items they'd like to share.
Well, I'll kick it off. I'm Melissa Jessup from Human Resources, and I am pleased to report that our school system was recently selected by the North Carolina Public School Relations Association to receive a gold award for our digital media and community engagement. I submitted our singing superintendent, his truly, Dr. Brad Rice, for this category. It was judged by the State Public Relations Association in the state of Georgia. Tomorrow there will be a special luncheon, and then Dr. Rice will receive this award on behalf of our school district, and also he and the school system are in the running for this category for best of the shows. So thank you, Dr. Rice, for putting our school system on the map. I think it's going to greatly help with our recruiting this year, so we're excited. Thank you.
Well, thank you. What other good things have been going on?
Officer Jenkins.
Officer Jenkins.
Officer Jenkins, that's a good segue
there. I mentioned yesterday at our principals meeting that our SRO, Steve Jenkins, was recognized by the Sheriff's Department as the SRO of the year. So we're proud of him and appreciate everything that he does for us here at North.
Any other items?
I have a cool Pine Grove connection. I have a student who just was recognized to win a $1,000 scholarship for a summer enrichment camp for this summer. She applied, or I got to pick several students, recommended them, wrote a recommendation. She had to write an essay. I gave her the requirement. She returned it to me the next morning with a bright smile. She actually was picked first place for the Central District, so that was awesome. And she received $1,000 to go to a marine biology camp at UNC Wilmington this summer. So she's stoked for that. It's Lily Jones.
Fantastic.
I asked the same thing.
Also, kind of along those lines, the early college right now is up to $3.7 million in scholarships for their students. And it's January, so we still have a ways to go in the timeline. And actually, they have one of their students that's being recruited by Yale. So an Ivy League school is recruiting students here in Stokes County. So
That might be my great niece.
So that's an awesome thing as well. Other items? I see maintenance. I know y'all been busy. You've got a lot of good projects and a lot of public projects that have been finished recently or working on. Any that y'all like to share?
Other than the air conditioning at North and South Stokes.
We've got air conditioning in the gyms at North and South. We also have new bleachers, I believe, here at North that have all gone in. Replaced a lot of old flush valves at West Stokes High School and getting a lot of things taken care of. Appreciative of the county commissioners and some debt that came off that allowed us to have some more capital money this year. And they're doing a great job of taking care of some of those projects and getting those things working. So a lot of great things going on there as well. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? All right, we'll jump into the agenda today. The first thing I want to talk about a little bit is our weather and our makeup calendar. Yesterday at our leadership team meeting, we shared the revised calendar with the principals, and made some explanations with that. It is now posted on our website, and we shared it on Facebook as well. But there's going to be some things that maybe causes a little bit of confusion. And so I wanted to share that with a larger group here. So if you hear this out in the community or at your schools or your churches or Town and Country or the Berry Patch or wherever you may be, and if somebody has a question, that you can help answer these questions. If you look at our calendar, the first thing that's going to be different are there are 2 dates circled. January 8th and 9th. Those are dates, if you remember, the first day on January 8th, they were saying that we were going to get a freezing rain type event that was going to hit Stokes County about 10 a.m. that morning. And several of y'all in here know that we have some very long bus routes, especially at the Early College and Meadowbrook Academy, where those buses, to be honest, leave the lot about 3:50 in the morning. And so to be at school at 8 o'clock. Now they don't pick up their first kid at 3:50, but when you serve the whole county, you leave from one end, drive to the other, and start picking up kids on your way back. So it's a long bus route. So we have to make decisions pretty early in the morning, and it takes a long time that if we dismiss school to get everyone home. So when we saw that the weather service was saying that that would come in about 10 o'clock that day, we went ahead and made the decision to close school, but that was after buses had already started running. Again, the buses started running at 3:50 in the morning, and that weather report didn't come out till right about 5 o'clock in the morning. 4:51 is when they changed that forecast from late in the day to earlier in the day. Now, it turned out it didn't come in earlier in the day, but you know, we have to listen to those forecasts. And then on the 9th, that was the day that it did come in and rain a little bit. We had a little bit of ice in the area, basically the top third of the county, and we thought that it would thaw out, looking at temperature and time graphs of when things would get above freezing, when the sun would come up. And so we went with a 3-hour delay to try to give a little bit more time. Well, the problem was a fog rolled in and froze, and it didn't get better, it got worse. And so we had to make the rapid decision to close school for students that day as well. Well, that day was another day buses had ran and students had been picked up on the buses. Well, in a thing called the School Attendance and Student Accounting Manual, it states a lot of stuff, but then the end of it, if school buses are en route to schools, when school is canceled for the day, then the day and instructional hours scheduled for that day will count toward the required minimum. So if buses run, they leave the lot on the way to their route, and again, we had kids picked up, that day counts. So even though we canceled school, it still counts. So we don't have to make up those days. So that's why they're circled on the calendar, because even though we canceled it, buses ran and we get to count those days. So we don't have to make those up. So if last night I saw on Facebook when we posted it, somebody says, well, there's 2 more days to make up. I guess we'll have to wait to hear when that is. No, we don't have to make up those 2 days. So that's why those are circled. Then, the 3 days last week that we were snowed out came from those other spots in the calendar, and that's more traditional that everybody's used to. The dates in February, and then when actually, before I realized that rule was in effect, when we canceled that early day, we took the day after the MLK weekend. So then when we realized we didn't have to take those days, we just moved that over to use one of those days and then the 2 days in February. So as of right now, today, January 25th at 8:39 in the morning, spring break is still intact. Now, what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks? I don't know, and I'm not going to make that prediction, obviously. But if more weather comes, we have 3 work days in June left, we have a work day in April, and we have spring break, and then if a lot of bad things happen, we also have Saturdays. But this is the revised calendar, and so if people ask you, well, when are we going to make those other 2 days up? We don't have to, because we ran buses those days. Are there any questions about that? Okay. The other question that has come up is about, with those work days being on those days when we had 5, 6, 7 inches of snow, depending on where you are in the county, why were those optional work days and not closed? And I sent out an email trying to explain that. but I wanted to make sure I talked with you about it as well. First of all, when I say it's an optional teacher workday, there is absolutely no pressure for you to get out and drive in inclement weather. There is no pressure to do that at all. I do not want you to put yourself in harm's way. There are people like me that enjoy it. I want to get out and see what goes on. I want to get out and drive in it. I've never been stopped for weather. I don't plan on ever stopping for weather. I enjoy it. There are people like that. And there are people that will say, I want to go to school when no one's calling and I can get a lot of work done. I can do a week's worth of work in 7 or 8 hours if no one's bothering me. And so there are people that want to go to work. And so with making that an optional teacher workday, it gives people options. They can use personal leave in those days without needing a sub, without a deduction, correct? So if somebody says, well, I have this personal leave, but I never want to use it because if students are in session, I have to pay for it. Well, this gives them an opportunity to use it without using a deduction. So that's an option. They can use regular annual leave if they have accrued that. And then the other thing we put in place last year is you can make up this time, working it out with your supervisors, a makeup schedule. A mutually agreed upon time that's in addition to your normal work stuff, but things that you want to do. And we have remediation in the summer with retesting. If people would like to work that, that's a great opportunity for that. After the kids are out, that they could retake their EOGs if they've had, some remediation summer school type activity. We've been doing that for several years, and this allows people to do that and count it for these work days. If somebody, and I'm just spitballing ideas here, if you wanted to become a Google certified teacher, they have online classes for that. If you went to your principal and said, hey, I would like to be a Google certified teacher, can I do this online module that takes so many hours and you get certificates for it, can I do that? If that's mutually agreed upon between y'all, that's fantastic. So there's lots of options for that, but it is not me trying to pressure you to come to school. And I had someone reach out to me and say, well, if I say it's optional, I think you're going to think bad of me if I don't show up. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't expect you to do that at all. But with a county the size that we have, if somebody lives 3 doors down from a school and they want to go to work, I don't want to take that option away from them and say, no, you can't, and you can't get credit for it at that point. Are there any questions about that? Also, it gives us flexibility in the calendar because if I use it, close it for an annual leave day, remember I went through this last time, I have to take one of the yellow days from spring break and then turn that into an optional teacher work day. So just trying to give that flexibility and again to preserve spring break as long as possible. Those were some of the reasons behind that.
Dr. Rice, what you're saying for the 8th and 9th, it does not have to be made up for students.
For students, yeah. Correct, thank you. Those hours, again, teachers are under a 215-day calendar where they have holidays, you have your leave days, and then we have student days. And so if you chose not to come to work there, it's like a work day for you. Again, you can choose to make up those hours. Some people work those days. And so it's a regular day for you as far as we need to work, but student days don't have to be made up. Again, when I went through this last time, we talked about student hours and staff hours and how they're different, but they're connected, of course.
Dr. Rice, you might want to touch base just a little bit on classified employees and making up time and the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Right, with the Fair Labor Standards Act, with making up time, one of the big things we have to worry about is not going into overtime. So with that, again, you really have to work with your supervisor to make sure that we're in the rules on that. And it may be a week that's a shortened week, that's an opportunity, or a day that, something that has to work out there. So we really have to be careful with that. So again, that's why we say work that out with your supervisor, because everybody has a lot of different situations going on, and we just need to make sure we're following the rules.
And then another question they might have is how long do I have to make up my time?
And that's why I'm glad I always bring people in here, because they help me stay on track. So thank you, Ms. Moore. The other one is we need to have this done by the end of the year payroll. And so now the people that want to work after the school year ends with that remediation program, you can schedule that with your principal. But then if you decide, if you get sick those days or you decide at the last minute you don't want to do that, then we would have to go back and take leave. And we can work that out, you know, the next year if we needed to or not. But we have to close out the year by June 30th. That is our business fiscal year ending by June 30th. So we have to have those plans in place and either completed or, you know, the plan set by that end of the year, June 1st payroll.
The other question we received is when I make up my time, do I get the benefit of the delay? So,
Right. The other question is about the delays, and I'm just restating that more so for the camera than for in here, is if we were on a 2-hour delay, how much time do I need to make up? Delays are for your safety. That is what that is for. So a delay is for safety. It's not a reduction in the school day. If you were sick on a day when we have a 2-hour delay, you have to take a whole day of annual leave. So in making up time, you make up your normal, whether it's a 7.5 or 8-hour day, depending on what type of contract you're on, you make up a day, not a shortened day, because on, you know, January 9th, it was a 3-hour delay. Do I get to take 3 hours off if I make up that day? No, that is for safety, and the day you make it up, safety shouldn't be an issue. So you make up a day, so you, again, it goes back to an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and you know, we try to take into account that safety factor on those delay days. Any other questions about that? Yes, sir.
Let's say it's an option teacher work day, 3-hour delay, and they came in after that 3 hours, do they have to make up the 3-hour delay portion?
No, if you come in on those delayed days, 2-hour delay, 3-hour delays, you stop at your normal stopping time. That's just a delay in the morning.
And it counts as a full day.
And the other thing that there's been a lot of questions about, in the procedures we put out last year, anytime there's a weather-related teacher workday, now the ones regularly on the calendar, they start at your start time that your principal sets up if y'all have meetings or by your normal schedule. But on a weather day, if we say it is closed for students and an optional teacher workday, it is a 2-hour delay, unless we call it longer than that. Because if we're closing for weather, we want you to have extra time to get to school safe. We want you to let the sun get up so you can have a better visibility. So that is an automatic, that if it is a weather-related 2-hour delay, or weather-related closed for student optional teacher workday, it's a 2-hour delay. That's in our brochure that we put out and have on the website, but I know that luckily, this only comes up a couple of times a year. Sometimes we forget in 12 months. But I just do want to restate that as well. Any other questions about that? All right. The other thing I wanted to do is to listen to you this morning. We are getting ready to draft a new strategic plan. And a strategic plan is something that we listen to as many stakeholders as we can. We sent out a survey in the fall asking people to all of our parents, to staff, what do you want to see in a school district? We've had 2 town hall meetings so far, one at South, one at West. The next one will be February 12th, I believe, here at North Stokes. And basically we're trying to get as much input as we can, because as educators, we kind of see tunnel vision. We hear the latest research and we have some good ideas, but we want to make sure that we're serving the needs of our population as well. And so every area is unique, and people in Asheville might want a school district to do certain things. A school in Wilmington might have different ideas. Charlotte may be different from Stokes. I'm sure we do have some similarities, but we have some differences in the way that we want things to go for our district. So a strategic plan is a way to help us as we determine budgets, budget requests to commissioners, as we get ready to make decisions that help guide us to the place where we want to go. So I'd like to ask this group, if you don't want to do it verbally, we've got some notes being made here, and again, we've got it recorded as well, but on your desk, there are some papers there with some lines on it. And it very simply, I'm going to borrow this real quickly, says, what would you like to see Stokes County Schools do/work on in the next 5 years? And there could be a lot of openness to this. And again, we have a lot of different groups here. And it could be something tied to your group. It could be something tied to your niece or grandchild or child. You know, what would you want to see the direction of the district? You know, we have child nutrition people here, and it might be, well, we want to outsource all of our food services, or we want to make sure that we don't outsource our food services. You know, transportation, it might be, well, we want, you know, a new, and some things are out of our control, like the Tim's operating system. I know that came in on some of our surveys. We need to update our bus routing software. The old one is old, but we only have certain vendors we can use. But if there's something that, you know, several years ago somebody might have said, you know, I think it'd be great if we had GPSs on our buses so parents would know where the buses are. You know, that might be a great idea 5 years ago. We have that now, luckily. But if there's ideas that you have, maybe you've heard about it at another district, maybe you've heard about it on the news or whatever, but, you know, what type of things would you like for us to work on? And so I'm going to give you a few minutes think time. You can talk at your tables, you can just think to yourself, but take a few minutes and think, what would you like to see in our district in the next 5 years? Heard a lot of good discussion. Would any table be willing to kind of share out some of the things you talked about?
You know, since you asked, I'm gonna ask the bus driver's opinion.
Okay.
Okay, you were saying earlier in regards of, the early college leaving out that time of day. I'm sure there's bus drivers in here that will vouch to me that it does start early. But my question being is, I drive an EC bus, which goes all over the county, used to, other than what it does now. You've involved, Bob Eddy. Can they not take advantage of picking up these early college students? I mean, not early college, but the Meadowbrook, whoever it is that's out there as early as they are in the morning. Can they not contribute to lowering the time for these drivers or reducing the time for these drivers to be? They do it for elementary kids. Why isn't it good to do for the others?
I agree, because if it takes 40 minutes to get from one side of the county to the other, you're gonna pick a dinner at 4:30, I would not put my child on the bus, even in a high school, at 4:30.
And we agree and we're concerned about that. It gets down to the numbers of it. Where like in an EC population, we're able to do just a few little ones, and I don't mean little ones as in little kid, but a smaller number spread out throughout the county. It's cost effective in that regard. The numbers that we have at both Meadowbrook and the early college makes that a little cost prohibitive. We spend a great deal of money with contract transportation, more so than the state gives us anyway. And so to do the numbers we would need to do, it would really be a huge budgetary item. We agree that, you know, I don't want to get on a bus at 4:45, 4:50, 5 o'clock in the morning either. But cost effectiveness, we're constantly looking at it, both with EC services and others. Are there times when we need to do that, whether it's a homeless situation, or those, it's always, we factor that in. Is it cost effective to do that, and is it an efficient way to do that?
Even with my baby, they have only allotted us 2 of their vans that would be for students only.
Well, then you also have the J Crew.
JD Crew.
JD Crew.
We do a lot more still. But again, with my kids back in my day, they originally wanted to pick up my kids while they were picking up other people that were taking the doctor.
Right, now then I've heard comments back from parents saying, why is my 5-year-old on a bus with, a senior citizen person's being taken to the doctor? I mean, it's out there, it happens.
But we've stopped that, but my baby will only allowed us 2 of their vans to do that. And their price per mile is quite expensive. And the way they charge every student that mileage fee. When we pick them up, they charge every school, even though they're running something together now.
Right.
Jimmy Booth, it's not. They charge from the further point out, and you might have to pick up along the way, there's no additional charge for those, but the Y Betty doesn't offer that.
And just a quick summary of that for the camera, in case they couldn't hear that. The question was, why do we not use more contract transportation for some of these longer bus routes? And cost is a factor in some of it. The other part is the capacity of the contract transportation in this area. We don't have a lot to choose from in this area, and so we're allotted 2 vans from one service, and so they don't have the capacity to do the large numbers that we have at both Meadowbrook and the early college. But we do look at individual circumstances when needs arise. Is this a cost-effective way where they can meet our needs, or is it something that we need to do as well?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, if the quantities are small, is a smaller bus, like the little white, small activity bus like a van, is that the same cost as like a big bus?
For one, you can't make passenger stops in an activity bus,
Well, I mean,
the white
so
buses.
could you
But if
buy
it was a
one?
shorter,
Yeah.
it's still the same mileage. And to be honest, the cost for those buses are almost identical.
I was thinking like 2 buses, 2 small buses, but that was my question, if they cost as much as a big bus.
Well, the other issue that we have then is then you would need 2 drivers.
Yeah.
And
We
so
don't have 2
I
drivers.
have problems with drivers now.
we're having problems with the drivers, having enough drivers now, and then to add drivers onto there. But there's an efficiency rating that we get reimbursed from the state. And just using easy numbers here, if we spend $100 in transportation, and I know I'm making this very simplified, so please forgive me, finance and transportation, but just for layman's terms, if we spend $100 in the 16-17 school year on transportation, and our rating comes in at 90%, then they will give us $90 for the next year. So we don't even get the full cost of what it cost us. So we want our efficiency rating as close to 100 as possible, if not over 100. And there's a big formula that goes into that about the miles we drive, are all the seats on the bus full, and those things factor into this. So if we run a bunch of buses half full, the state won't give us back the money that we spent, much less what we need. So, but to try to have full buses in Stokes County where everyone is spread out, it takes a long time. Now, if you have an apartment complex and 70 kids are getting off that bus to go to a school, you pull up, make one stop, it fills up, and you go to the school, that's great. But to drive 40 miles, 50 miles to pick up 20 kids on a 72 passenger bus, it's a long route and it hurts us cost-wise. So we constantly have to evaluate what we're doing to try to, because the less the state gives us for that funding for transportation, the more we have to take out of local money that could be spent for other issues. So we're constantly monitoring it. Can we do better? Yes, and we have some ideas. And so we're working on those things to try to increase our efficiency so that we're not losing money in transportation. But all those factors take into it. And out of that 80%, out of that $100 or 90% we would get if we had a 90% efficiency rating, then if we go outside of that and hire a contract transportation, that comes out of that money as well. So there's a lot of different factors that play into it. But it's good suggestions, and we are constantly looking at it because we know we have to make it better too.
I'm gonna throw another bus question out there then, since you said you don't have enough drivers. Back in the day, whenever I was hired, I was told I had to keep 2 positions. I'm hired as a EC bus driver, plus I'm also in the classroom. I was told I had to have my CDL license to maintain my job. I know back probably 5 or 6 years ago, whenever we had a different principal at our school, I'm from King Elementary, you had the TAs there were required to have their CDL license. And it was very nice to have that situation where if somebody was out, you just actually went to the classroom and asked them if they could drive. Or either you could put them on an EC bus where you have a driver and a monitor. Now I think majority of those people have their CDL license. I know there's 2 of us on our bus and both of us have our CDL license. I'm the driver, the other person's the monitor. can it not go back to that standards where you, because I mean, I'm on a bus every morning at probably 5:15 or 5:20. You hear all the conversations where people, even up here in the northern part of the county, where they're having to share 2 buses to go for 3, they're having a split route, in other words. And you hear the conversation, well, when is Billy Joe gonna be picked up on Early Lane? And you don't know for sure, I hope I didn't get the name right, but I know I got the name right. But it's like, if you had that ability or the available at your school, it's easier to get somebody to sub instead of calling them at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, can you drive a bus? Or either a coach or a principal driving also, even yourself as far as that goes.
Yeah.
So can we go back to those standards of having, I know there's medical reasons that some people can't drive, or you might be a single parent and you're the only one that's able to get your children on a bus or get them to school, whichever. But it did seem to work out better. But when those licenses expired, they were gone. I mean, they're done. I mean, I'm not saying throw Carolyn Tedder on a bus to drive. I don't know if any of you know her or not, but she's retired now. But I would not dare think about putting her on a bus to drive. But she could easily have taken the spot of a driver moving to on an EC bus where you got 2 drivers. One of those people could drive, and she could have rode the bus. With EC students on there that's buckled out, you probably got 15 or 18 students on there, where you just get to a stop and say, hey, can you go unbuckle Billy Joe back there and let him off the bus?
We have been discussing this the last several months, both as directors and as leadership team meeting and with the school board, talking about this in different options. Obviously, first and foremost, I would love to have a volunteer army. People that want to do that. We shared with some principals yesterday that for them to go back and talk with their staff about some ways to incentivize that for people to do it. Because we want people to want to drive a bus. You don't want to put somebody behind the wheel of a bus that's not comfortable and doesn't want to drive. And I don't want to take away from a great employee and not allow them to work because they're not comfortable driving a bus. And so somebody might be a great teacher assistant, custodian, cafeteria worker, teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, whatever, but to look at somebody that says, you're an A-plus person, but now I have to get rid of you because you won't drive a bus and you don't feel comfortable to do that, that's the rub with that. And then if you force some but not others, well, what's your criteria for that? And so so our first thing that we're trying is to incentivize this, to try to encourage people to do it, and then, to make sure they're fairly compensated, and hoping, again, we had this conversation yesterday with principals, so I know it's not gotten out there yet, to try to get more options. That's our first step. At the end of the day, we have to get kids to school. If that doesn't work, we'll have to try something else. If that doesn't work, we'll have to try something else. But, so we realize we have to get kids to school. But the first thing we want to do is have volunteers that want to do it, that are comfortable doing it, so our kids are safe. That's of all the things with our bus drivers, I've said this multiple times, the most proud I've been as a superintendent of our drivers was that day in December when some of them said, I'm not comfortable driving, I don't want to drive today. Because that tells me they care enough about those kids' safety to not put themselves in danger. I want that type of relationship. I don't want to force somebody to drive that's not comfortable, because it is a huge responsibility when you have 30 to 70 kids behind you driving down the road. So we're trying to incentivize a volunteer force. That's our first step, and we put some of that in place yesterday.
But at the same time, I know TAs at schools, they have different jobs each week. You could throw that one in there also, where they could be on standby as a monitor or a bus driver. So they're prepared, say like the whole beginning of the school year, they're prepared as what week their time's going to come up. So.
And that step is on the table. We're just not there yet. We're trying to incentivize it first, but that is a step that we are looking at. It's on the table. Other items.
I'd like to say something. I'd like to bring up pay, because we got the W-2. And I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm gonna put it out there, $24,000 a year gross is hard to live on. So, I don't know, I mean, you know, you gotta get a part-time job and have a full-time job. I mean, and it's like everybody else, money's always, you know, how you supposed to make it? How you supposed to make it?
I understand, and our board is, I sat down with the board chair the other day and looked at the direction for the school year, and that is one of the things that will be discussed. And so we agree with you, absolutely agree with you. And we're looking to address that this spring. 100% agree. Yes, sir.
Okay, on the buses. I sub sometimes, you know, in the mornings like you have, in the afternoons. Is there any way that where's my bus app can be set up to give you a GPS if you're subbing? Where we can access it as far as bus number 225, I need to see their route. I mean, is that a sensible question?
It is, there is no technology, I've been trying to find that for years, that has that type of technology. There's nothing out there, but from rumors are there's stuff in the works.
Well,
What you're talking about is like a GPS, sort of like a Garmin, where you can put the bus route in and it will assist you as you go. Yeah, we would love to have that.
Right.
It's not there right now.
Because it's just, you know as well as I do, you know, you picking up one at 6:15 in the morning, and you're trying to ride down the road, look at that list over in your hand.
Absolutely.
And look at the mailboxes, trying to read the numbers, you know, and hopefully you'll get a fifth grader on there that will know most of the route.
Yeah.
You know.
And that, I think, is the reason why there's a lot of folks that are reluctant to sub.
Right.
Is because it is very difficult. And Dr. Rice, he and I were talking about this not long ago.
And I don't mind subbing, but it makes it difficult.
That would be huge if we can come up with something like that. And like I say, I'm
I thought
looking.
maybe where's my bus, you know, if we could access it.
Well, it only tells you where the bus is, not where it's supposed to go.
Where it needs to go.
And
What
so-
you need is something to show you where you need to go.
Right.
That would be very beneficial.
Understand?
I'm gonna take you back to his question though. There was a bus description, so is it supposed to be left on the bus or is it supposed to be left at a neutral spot at the school? The reason I'm asking that question is I've been told two different things. Honestly, my bus route and everything about all my kids is with me every minute of the day, but it's not here with me, it's in the car right now. But, where is it supposed to be left
I
at?
would hope there would be a copy left on the bus.
The problem with leaving a copy on the bus
Mike and Jeff,
is that
when
some
I deliver to
pedophile
you,
can go get that list,
Right,
and know
that's
where
true.
every student lives.
That's true.
That's the reason that we ask not to leave it on the bus. I know that's tough if you have to have a sub, but we've also requested principals to have a list in the office accessible to a sub, so when we get there, you know, one of the bus drivers should have a key to get into the school and get access that.
But see, a lot of the subs are not able to do that. And I mean, I'm fortunate because I can go in and make a copy of Beth's bus route if I wanted to, you know, at one spot. And then I'd have me a copy.
It's not a quick fix, I'm sorry.
I agree. Any other ideas? Yes, ma'am.
They do it.
Something that I think would be, like for a future range plan, would be a mentoring program for rising ninth graders to be able to be paired up with maybe a 12th grader or 11th grader for them to come in. And I know that there's been clubs in some high schools that have pulled in and done that. But I think if we had a county-wide thing where all of the high schools had a set of 40 kids that were 11th grade and 12th grade that did like a mentoring class maybe at the end of the school year to be able to connect with freshmen coming in just to kind of build that rapport to help them just as a mentor to transition into high school. I think that would be something, and it's not going to cost. I mean, you might want to fix them a breakfast or something, but the cost isn't there.
Thank you for that. Other ideas that you'd like to share from your table? if you would just, if the people that have written responses, if you would pile those up, I'd be happy to take those. Would love to take those and take a look at that. Just real quickly before we end, I also want to talk a little bit about some things that we just kind of kicked off and starting to brainstorm, and tell you a reason why. So again, if people in the videos or people at your schools are hear about this, that you might be able to answer some questions. We are starting to look at summer reading. Optional, not come to school reading programs, but optional at-home reading. And I was in a meeting a few weeks ago and heard the research that Scholastic had found that had been done back a couple of years ago that basically states that if a student reads 5 to 8 books in a summer. Now, that's not all Harry Potter books. I mean, as a kindergartner, it's a kindergarten book. A third grader is a third grader book. You know, an age-appropriate book. If they read 5 to 8 books in a summer, their Lexile score, which is a measure of reading, goes up on average 80 points. A student that does not read in the summer, theirs drops 50 points. Now what that means is, if after kindergarten a kid doesn't read, and after first grade a kid doesn't read, and after second grade a kid doesn't read, that kid could lose 150 points over those 3 summers, which is roughly a grade level. So even if they do perfect through the school years, everything they're supposed to do with the growth they're supposed to get, they're starting third grade at grade level behind. That convicted me, okay, not only to stop that 50-point drop so that our third graders aren't coming to us a grade level behind, but how can we increase that? 5 to 8 books is what the research says would be an 80-point gain. So we're starting to look at identifying some good books to put in people's hands, and maybe a longer range thing of actually collecting some books to give to kids at the end of a school year to say, read these over the summer before next school year, and maybe doing some introductory videos. Lots of different ideas going on right now. Because you know, as a little kid, the teachers are great at introducing a book. It's really magical. For those of y'all that have walked through classes and see them to introduce a book to a kid, it's really magical how that happens. And maybe put up, if we have 10 or 15 books, 5 books, to have those videos so parents could access that on their phone and either let the kids watch it, or the parents could watch it and then do it themselves. But to introduce a book and let a kid read it, 5 to 8 is not huge. But the research also says that students that read as little as 33.4, if you want to throw the points in there, 33 minutes a day, average scoring the 90th percentile in reading. Now, what's amazing is if you read 2 minutes a day, it shows an effect. If you read 5 minutes a day, it shows an effect. But 30 minutes a day, those kids that read that 33 minutes a day, average scoring in the 90th percentile. How can we get that word out to parents? Because I think as parents, we all want our kids to do well. And if we thought, you know, 30 minutes, that's one sitcom. That one time we could sit and let them read for that amount of time a day could have tremendous effects on our students. And so we're starting to kick that around a little bit. There's a lot of the details that's got to be worked out, and some of it might be a multi-year plan to try to get it going. But if you hear us talking about summer reading, I want you to kind of know some of the research that has stemmed some of this conversation. I believe our elementary school teachers got a survey yesterday. So those of you on the video that are watching this, you're saying, why did I get this survey? This is why we're getting this survey. We want your input. We want people's input on what are good quality books that we can put in this list to give to parents and possibly provide those books to people at the end of the year to say, these are some things that are really going to help your child out. I know as a parent, you know, even as an educator, there were some times I knew some things to do, but I didn't know the details. Well, we want to give people the details so they don't have to go figure it out. But we want to help people out with that. So those are some things that, you know, are kicking around in an educator's head. But again, we want to hear from community people. Please share with people that February 12th will be our next town hall meeting here at North Stokes. The survey, I believe, is still open and active, and we might send out a reminder about that as well, if they haven't completed that, to do that. But we want to hear from our community as well, from all of our employees. We have about 950 employees. All of you have a valuable voice, and we want to hear from you. Can we do 950 things if everybody has a thing? No? Well, we can certainly collect them and see what the big topics are and try to get those things tackled. Anybody have anything else before we close today? I try to close, I'll start on time and end on time. Again, I value your time in your schools and on your jobs, and I appreciate that. Yes,
One more
ma'am.
question. The video, can it be sent in as minutes so the teachers can read it a lot quicker and skim over it instead of sitting in front of watching a video? Please?
Possibly. I tried the last time to put the sections with minutes on there so they can fast forward to the section they were interested in. I could work on it.
Thank you.
I'll certainly try. Any other questions, comments? Well, thank y'all very much. Thank y'all for all that you do. Our next meeting is at South Oaks, and I don't have that date in my mind, but you'll get a follow-up email about that. West Oaks, yeah, we did South first. We'll be at West Oaks, and we'll send out an email with that date and time as a reminder.